Welcome, everybody, to the March Madness Sweet 16 preview special on the Grilling Truth Sports Network. Make sure if you want to bet on the games this weekend, the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, we've got Major League Baseball kicking off, the NBA, nobody really cares. But if you want to bet on it, you can go to BetMGM, the top sports book for betting on college basketball, NBA, baseball, you name it. BetMGM is the place to do it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the link in the description down below to check it out and go to it for some great first-time sign-up deals. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Today, we're going to look at all 8 games coming up into the Sweet 16. Hopefully, my voice will hold out. And the NCAA tournament this year, you look at the Sweet 16, there's only one matchup where you have a double-digit favorite, which is the San Diego State against Yukon, a rematch of last year's national championship game. And Joe Spillman says my shirt is on backwards. Yes, because I like it on backwards, Joe, so you can leave me alone. But this NCAA tournament, I would say this, the quality of play is not as good as what we've seen in the past. And I think that we're starting to see the transfer portal really start to have an effect on what's going on. The teams, continuity-wise, every year it seems like you're changing at least half of the players on your team. People are leaving. And tomorrow we are bringing back Survive in Advance. I'll be on with Steve Risley at noon live to discuss the transfer portal, the effect that and the NIL have had on the NCAA tournament, basketball, and college football in general. Make sure you check us out at noon live there. All right, guys, we're going to start off as an IU fan. I hate to do it, but we're going to start off with Gonzaga versus Purdue. Gonzaga and Purdue. Purdue was favored by 5.5 points. And I think what we see is a different Purdue team than what we've seen in the past. The Utah State team was not a bad team. Gonzaga hasn't been as dominant or as consistent as they have been in previous seasons. At times this year, they struggled. They lost to St. Mary's a couple times. Yet eventually, with a great head coach in Mark Few, they found an extra gear. And, as far as an underperforming team, that hasn't been true as of late. They've won 11-1 in their last 12 games. They're 5.5-point underdogs going in against the Purdue. Now, when you start off, size matters for both teams. I know Joe Spillman tells me his wife says that size doesn't matter. Joe, she's lying to you. But Gonzaga boasts 2 6'10" guys in Ben Gregg and Braden Huff, and they should at least pose some difficulty for Zachedey, who is the most dominant player in college basketball. And I know people will say he gets away with murder, but we watched Grambling State basically scratch, claw, left marks all over his body. Nobody ever defends Edey. Edey is a special player. When he scores 24 and gets 12 rebounds, it's no big deal because that's what you expect. And Purdue is not just Zach Edey alone. You've got Lawyer, you've got Lance Jones. This is a team that is more of a complete team than what we've seen before. And they beat Utah State, who was a formidable opponent. I think Utah State was, 26-6 coming in, had been ranked in the top 25 off and on during the season. But the offense for Purdue was fantastic. They scored 106 points. The ball movement, the energy level were outstanding as well. And Gonzaga's recent team isn't your typical one. They're not great from the outside. They're not forcing enough turnovers, yet the Bulldogs' offense still finds ways to score easily on its inside drives. So when we look at this game, Kansas basically was a shell of themselves. They're missing McClure, who was their best player. Purdue was a lot different than playing Kansas. And when we look at this, the 5.5 points doesn't scare me at all. I think Purdue wins this by double digits. Purdue is the better team. And when Gonzaga scores less than 77 points, they struggle to win. I look for a Purdue win somewhere between 8 and 12 points. Next up, same region here in the Midwest. We've got Creighton versus Tennessee. Yes, Joe Spillman, I do mean tomorrow, Survive in Advance at noon. Will be with former national champion, still a national champion to this day. He's got the ring, and if you don't believe me, just ask him. He'll send you a picture of it, even if he doesn't know you. But let's get back to the game here. We're going Creighton versus Tennessee for the right to play what I think will be Purdue in the Elite Eight. Now, Creighton is a team that can shoot the ball. Tennessee has been inconsistent. Dalton Knecht did not have a great last game as Tennessee barely got past Texas. What are we going to get here? I mean, the SEC has proven that they are a mess as a conference. Creighton, on the other hand, plays at a Big East that basically only got 3 teams in, but all 3 teams are national title contenders. Yukon is the favorite to win it all. Marquette's the favorite to win in the Sweet 16. So you could possibly, with a Creighton win here, have 3 teams, all 3 teams from the Big East in the Elite Eight. When we look at this matchup, the question is going to be Tennessee has not exactly excelled on its finishing kick at the end of the season. They've been extremely inconsistent over this season. Now, after a rough win against Texas, the Vols might find some consistency, or they have to find some consistency against Creighton, because Creighton is a team that can get on fire and blow you out quickly if you're not ready to score the basketball. And Tennessee had issues scoring against Texas. How do you beat Tennessee? You hit from 3. That is the key. Their perimeter defense is not great. Now, this is not an issue for the Creighton Blue Jays. They used a variety of different players to hit 15 threes during their exciting double overtime win over the Oregon Ducks. Creighton understands they need to maximize possessions through working the glass on both ends, and they do this effectively. Tennessee excels at controlling the defensive boards. Creighton can get to the glass from time to time, but is not considered one of the most physical teams. But they get to the glass enough, so I don't think this is going to be a one-sided advantage on the boards. When we look at the point spread here, Tennessee is favored by 2.5. My prediction, Creighton shoots the ball a lot better, a lot more consistently. They're solid on the glass, and they don't foul. So Tennessee's going to have a hard time getting to the free throw line. To win this game, Tennessee will have to be consistent in all phases, and they have not shown the ability to do that for an entire 40 minutes on very many occasions this season. So I'm going to go with Creighton. I think you're going to get Creighton against Purdue in the Elite Eight. And, I mean, Creighton has the 3-point shooters to be able to possibly beat Purdue. Now, when we go to the next region, we've got Duke versus Houston. We've got NC State versus Marquette. You've got the possibility of an all-ACC Elite Eight. Even though the ACC's caught a lot of crap, they've still got 3 teams here. And the Duke-Houston matchup, you got to worry a little bit about Houston just for what you saw against Texas A&M. They blew almost a 13-point lead in the last 2 minutes of the game. But the thing about Houston is they're well coached with Kelvin Sampson. I know Indiana fans don't want to hear that, but Kelvin Sampson's a good coach. They give up a last-second 3 on one of the best passes you're ever going to see. Up there with the Christian Laettner pass, probably more difficult because he was running out of time. He makes the pass. Texas A&M hits the 3. You had 4 players missing that had fouled out when you go to that overtime. And in the overtime, Houston dominated the rest of that game. Now with Duke, it was almost like they flipped the switch at halftime in the Vermont game. They struggled against Vermont in the first half. Second half, they blew the doors off of Vermont, beating them 64-47. Not particularly impressive. It's Vermont. But the game against James Madison was truly different. Duke played their best game in a season. They beat a very good James Madison team, 93-55. And now, while Duke got some serious overall production, 8 threes from Jared McCain, which you can't really guarantee is going to happen all the time, they were prolific on the offensive end. Duke found its playoff legs just in time. Now, right now, Houston is favored by 4.5 points, and a lot of people thought Houston was a team that was going to advance to the Final Four. This Duke team causes them some major issues, I think. Duke must keep the ball moving effectively and efficiently against Houston's guards. And Houston's guards are going to be looking to take away the 3 from Duke. Duke's not going to be able to make the 3s like they did against James Madison. The whole key to this game, to me, is for Duke to avoid turnovers while increasing assists. That is what the Duke Blue Devils need to do to win this game. Against James Madison, they had 22 assists and now have won 21 consecutive matchups when dishing out 12 or more assists. Houston has an aggressive offensive attack. The offense gets overlooked because the defense is so good. At times, it may get lost because of their style of play, like I just said. But for all of that great defensive toughness with this team, when they want to score, they can do so, and they can do it in bunches. They attack constantly. And when the defense for Duke is on its game, it doesn't allow the other team's offense to catch their breath. Duke has generally managed to overcome teams in games when his turnovers become excessive. So, double-digit turnovers in this game is going to make it tough for Duke to win. Houston's very good in transition offense, and they can put up points quickly. Houston has only failed to score 10 or more turnovers in 4 games this season. As long as the Cougars prevent Duke from settling into its rhythm, making this a physical battle on both ends, the tempo and style would tell me that Houston's going to win the game. But my prediction on the game is this: even with the 4.5 points, I'm going to bet Duke to win because my odds with Duke to win, I mean, you're looking at plus 152. So if you bet 100, you win 152. I think Duke is the better defense or is better defensively than they're given credit for. And we saw Houston only score 47 points. All right, we've seen Houston get blown out by Iowa State where they had a hard time scoring. They didn't score a lot of points there. I think the Blue Devils are hot. I think the Cougars are kind of struggling right now. I like Duke in the upset in this game, and I think that they advance to the Elite Eight to take on the winner of the NC State Marquette game, which the closest thing we have to a long shot in this, outside of you got San Diego State, but they were in a national championship game last year. NC State is a team that has come from nowhere. They win the ACC championship. They beat North Carolina and Duke, two teams that are still here. It almost looks like 1983 again, where they ran through and they beat Duke, they beat North Carolina, and then they upset Virginia and Ralph Sampson. They went on to win a national championship game. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen in this game, but NC State right now is a very dangerous basketball team. Marquette, on the other hand, is a team that has been consistently good all season. They play in a Big East, which is a tough conference, especially. It's a very top-heavy conference. Now, when you look at NC State, I think it's their ability to move the ball around the perimeter to generate easy shots. The defense is drastically stronger, and they've held opponents to 39% or under 39% from the floor in each of the last 4 wins. This is a team that you remember to start the ACC tournament. I think they were 17-14. They were behind the freaking Louisville at halftime, and it looked like their head coach was going to get fired. Right now, it looks like the head coach is probably going to get an extension. Now, how can you beat Marquette? You have to keep them from finding their shooting groove. When hitting at least 44% of its shots, Marquette is 25-2, while it falls to 2-7 when they're under 44% of the shots. So stopping the three-point shot was the key to the Wolfpack's first 2 tournament wins. Over the last 5 games, no team, including that Oakland team that can definitely shoot the ball, has managed to shoot 35% from three-point range. Marquette boasts an average three-point shooting percentage of 35.8. And as a team, they are 14-0 when making 38% or better from 3. They know exactly how to create baskets. North Carolina State excels at attacking the ball and forcing mistakes. And they don't turn the ball over often. To win, North Carolina State must do what it does best. They must move it around efficiently while looking for easy shots. Their fast-paced style requires patience as they wait their turn and taking what opportunities arrive. They're very good at taking advantage of other teams' mistakes. Now, the point spread here is 6.5, which does scare me a little bit. But North Carolina State has been on fire over their last 7 games. Marquette has been consistent all season. I think that consistency leads to a Duke-Marquette Elite 8 matchup. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Marquette. I'm going to give the 6.5 points here. Next up, we've got Yukon against San Diego State. This is a rematch of last year's national championship game. I think people forget last year, Yukon dominated most of this game. San Diego State did get back to within 5 or 6 points in the last 5 or 6 minutes before Yukon pulled away again. I don't think this is an open and shut case on who wins this game. San Diego State is a seasoned team. They were in the national championship game. I don't think they're going to be afraid of Yukon. They've already played them. That should be out of the way. 10.5 points is a lot of points here. And let's face it, I saw, Mike Greenberg on ESPN make an asinine comment yesterday asking who would win a 7-game series between Yukon and the Boston Celtics. Well, I'll tell you what, I think the Boston Celtics would probably have beaten the first 2 opponents Yukon played much easier than what Yukon did. That was a stupid statement. But Yukon is trying to become the defending national champions. That's not something that has happened a lot. And there are always pitfalls, there are always roadblocks you don't expect to see. In 1990, the UNLV team overran Duke by 30 points. If you remember, they struggled against Ball State in the Sweet 16, and Chandler Thompson barely beat Ball State by a point or two. So things do happen in situations like this. Is San Diego State, can the Aztecs duplicate their three-point shooting performance against Yale? All right. Can this get them to the Elite Eight, pull the big upset against Yukon? Now, at its worst, hitting from outside has been a constant problem for the Aztecs. They made 13 of 27 threes against Yale in that 85-57 victory, but this is not Yale they're playing. And to stay competitive, San Diego State's probably going to have to hit 8 to 10 threes. They have not shown the ability to consistently do that this season. Now, the Aztecs defense will have to stand tall against this great Yukon team, especially inside. They've got an experienced backcourt that's adept at attacking and holding their own in the battle. They have to force turnovers against Yukon, which is hard to do. Now, the thing about Yukon is, and it's the thing that is a little scary if you get a little foul trouble, something like that, the Huskies are not an extremely deep team, nor does it force an abundance of mistakes from its opponents. Yukon is a team that is extremely well coached. They do the right thing. They don't force a lot of turnovers, but they're not going to turn the ball over a lot either. And Yukon has some impressive offensive firepower. They got a little national championship swagger to them, as well as size all across its roster. But Donovan Clingan stands out among them as an aggressive inside player with enough power and skill to compete with San Diego State star Jaden Ledee. And he can even outplay Ledee. If he does that, game's over. Now, San Diego State was on fire against Yale. They're going to have to be on fire in this game also. They possess talent. They rebound well. But the Huskies will simply outmuscle San Diego State. And once you're on an 8-0 scoring run, you're probably going to see an 8-0 scoring run 3 or 4 different times in this game. So I'm going to say Yukon wins this game to advance to the Elite Eight. They will beat San Diego State 81-65, take Yukon, and give the points. Next up, we've got an intriguing game. We've got Illinois, the Fighting Illini, one of the two best teams in the Big Ten. They're going to step up and they're going to play the Iowa State Cyclones. The Cyclones are a team that, of course, their non-conference schedule gets ripped constantly. But make no mistake about it, this may be the best defensive team in the country. If it's not the best, it's in the top 5. Illinois is a team that at times has been inconsistent, but they've got Terrence Shannon. They've got DeBoss. This is a team that could win a national championship. And Iowa State is a team that can also. Iowa State, you've got to worry offensively, though. And I would think their offensive issues will make this team eventually come up short. In this game, Iowa State's favored by 1.5 points. Now, Iowa State overcame Washington State 67-57 beyond some key late shots in the second half. Now, that is typical of their play style, where they kind of grind you down with their defense and then they pull away at the end. They play solid three-point defense. They hit timely shots. They forced 13 turnovers, and they had multiple scores off those. Their transition offense is extremely good. Illinois cannot turn the ball over. Illinois thrives when it gets the ball moving around the perimeter, inside, outside, whether that means scoring fast break points or turning defensive rebounds into scoring opportunities. They're one of the best teams in the country at that. What it does poorly, however, is force takeaways. It ranks 348th nationally for mistakes caused, and it doesn't always bring defensive intensity and focus. You got to think playing in the Sweet 16, you're going to bring defensive intensity and focus. Iowa State doesn't make mistakes, on the other hand. So this is going to be a game where Iowa State's going to try to shorten the game. They're going to try to have long possessions. Illinois has a very long team. This is their advantage. I mean, it seems like everybody in this team is 6'6" and taller, including Terrence Shannon, who will later go on to star in the NBA, I think. And everyone found ways to contribute on the boards. Everybody crashes the glass. Iowa State does rebound, but not nearly enough on the defensive glass. All right. So that could be lack of opponent shots against Iowa State just because Iowa State is so good and they have a tendency to limit teams' possessions, number one, and also force teams down into the final 10 seconds to force up shots. Now, I think Illinois could find itself powering through this Iowa State defense. They possess enough firepower to subdue any defense. Iowa State's rebounders, and this is going to be the issue. They average 13 offensive rebounds and over 41 boards per game, and they've won 16 consecutive games when they've allowed no more than 29 rebounds to their opponent. I think when picking this game, Iowa State's favored by one. I'm going to take Illinois. I'm going to bet Illinois to win this game. I think it's going to be tight, like 71-68, but I think Illinois should dominate the boards. And this is a bad matchup for Iowa State. I mean, this is probably the worst team or one of the two worst teams they could play right now. So I think what we're going to see is I think we're going to see Illinois advance to play Yukon and what will be a high-level, great basketball game to go to the Final Four. Now we get to our final region out west. We've got Alabama versus North Carolina. These are two high-scoring basketball teams. They can score in the hundreds if they have to, and we've seen them do it multiple times. But Alabama did play defense against Grand Canyon. North Carolina is favored by 3.5. Grand Canyon only scored 61 points. They only hit 2 of 23-point shots against the nation's 347th ranked scoring defense. When the time came for an aggressive surge, the Crimson Tide just did that. The Bama defense will not be able to do the same to the Tar Heels, but they just kind of got to hold serve occasionally. That should be enough. North Carolina basketball teams have always excelled when pushing up the energy and shooting the ball. If you prefer an exhilarating and action-packed experience, North Carolina teams are the teams you want to watch. They will ramp up the energy. Now, Bama has won 16 consecutive games when scoring 89 or more points. UNC is unbeaten when making 48% or more of its shots. They're 27-4 when hitting 38% or better from three. Alabama's offensive firepower puts North Carolina under immense pressure. Making shots should not be considered optional when competing against Bama. UNC's record when making more than 48%, 11-0 once again. Alabama allows teams to shoot 44% or better from the field. I think Coach Oates has done an outstanding job at Alabama. And when you watch them play a really good Grand Canyon team that can score points, the way they locked down on defense, I think they could do that a little bit in this game. And if they could do that just a little bit, they could pull the upset. Now, I think these teams are going to score a lot of points. This will be a tight game. There's going to be a lot of lead changes. This is the game of the tournament, I think, at least up until this point. Bama, I think, is a slightly better coached team, and they showed against Grand Canyon they can turn up the defense when needed. I expect a close game. I'm going to take Bama into 3.5 points. I like Bama to win this game 92-90 to advance to an Elite Eight matchup against the winner of the Clemson-Arizona game. So Clemson-Arizona, point spread here. Arizona is favored by 6.5 points. Now, Clemson's a team that finished the season on a horrible note. They got embarrassed in the ACC tournament, and a lot of people thought they were going to lose in the first or the second round. I mean, the first round, New Mexico, people thought they were going to lose that game. The second round, people thought they were going to lose to Baylor, but they're still here. Arizona is a team that has a history of getting knocked off in that first weekend. So their win against Dayton was huge. And Dayton is a very good basketball team that spent much of the year in the top 25. Arizona played perfect in the first half. They kind of dropped the ball a little in the second half, let Dayton get back in the game, but they did close it out. I think that's got to be huge mentally for a team that suffered a catastrophic loss to Princeton last year in the first round. So when we break this game down, all right, these are two teams that people had some doubts about. I think most people thought Arizona would be here. I don't think too many people thought Clemson would. And Clemson did struggle down the stretch. They were quickly eliminated in the ACC tournament, but they easily took out New Mexico and the Bears with ease. Those are two solid basketball teams. New Mexico and Baylor are not bad teams. So this is a Clemson team that may be peaking at the right time. Now, Clemson also poses or possesses the size to compete against Arizona for the entire 40 minutes, something Arizona has found hard to do a lot of times this season. And although their guards may be smaller in stature, this team excels on the defensive boards and they're excellent on the inside. Now, what we saw this last weekend is the Arizona team we've been waiting for. But the competition, first round was easy, no big deal. The second round still worries me that the second half they didn't play near as well as they did in the first half. Now, Arizona can be deadly when they're moving the ball. But will they? Arizona wants to get going early, but if the game slows down too much, that's what their size factor becomes a deciding factor. When things begin to unravel and break down, and they inevitably will for the nation's number one rebounding team, Arizona, they should have enough offensive rebounders on a roster to see them through it all on the boards. I think this game will be close for most of the way. I think the last 10 minutes, I think we will see Arizona kind of pull away. And I'll say the other thing is this: Clemson is a very good free throw shooting team. If they can get the line 20 to 25 times, they have a chance to win this game or at least cover. But the way I'm going to bet this is I'm going to take Arizona. I'm going to give the 6.5 points. I say Arizona wins this game 77 to 69. And really, the thing about not as many number 14, 15, we don't have as many double-digit seeds. I don't think we're going to get a lot of blowouts. And my final four right now is I would have Arizona playing Alabama. I think Alabama beats them. I would have Illinois, Yukon. I think Yukon wins and plays Alabama in the Final Four. I think Duke plays Marquette. I think Duke goes to the Final Four. I think Purdue plays Creighton. I think Purdue goes to the Final Four. I think we're setting up for an epic confrontation between Donovan Clingan and Zachedey for the national championship in a couple weeks. I can't wait to see that game. I'm an Indiana Hoosier fan, but we've already got 5 banners. If Purdue has just one, maybe that's not so bad. Yukon will be shooting for their 6th banner in the last quarter century. Yukon is the best program in college basketball in the last 25 years. All right, guys, remember, Survive and Advance tomorrow with myself and my co-host, 1981 national champion Steve Risley, as we will break down that first weekend of the tournament, the quality of play, the effect the transfer portal may have had on that, and the NIL money. We'll also have a little bit more news. We may talk a little, little Los Angeles Dodger gambling scandal. But make sure you check us out tomorrow. Make sure you follow me at Grueling Truth. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell notification button on YouTube, and go bet all your games at BetMGM, the top sports book out there. But for now, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.